seriously popular.
Welcome to Alas, Vine and Hitchens. I am Sarah Vine.
And I am Peter Hitchens.
And this week, Peter on why he will never call Camilla the Queen, and I will be diving into the story of our naval fleet. Back after this. Welcome to Alas, Vine and Hitchens. I am Sarah Vine.
She is Sarah Vine, and I am Peter Hitchens. And I wanted to complain about the extraordinary habit that the BBC particularly have got into of referring to somebody called the Queen. The other day, for instance, said that the Queen had revealed that she'd been molested on a train going to Paddington some years before and had fought off her attacker with a high-heeled shoe. And I thought, the Queen fought off an attacker with a high-heeled shoe? She would never have had to do that. She would have frozen any assailant with a stare. And then I realised they weren't talking about the Queen. They were talking about a lady who I think of and will always think of as Mrs. Camilla Parker Bowles. And I cannot, and I've tried, out of politeness and niceness, I cannot bring myself to think of her as the Queen. And when I hear the phrase the Queen, she doesn't come to mind. And I don't think she ever will. There are many reasons for this. One of them being the huge impression which the real Queen made on me in the many years of her reign, though actually, I should point out, I was born before her reign began. And it's also partly because I just don't think that she is technically the Queen.
Peter, I would say I actually really agree with you. And in fact, when she was made Queen, I think I wrote a piece saying she should just remain as Queen Consort. It's not that I don't like her. I think she's actually a good, nice person. I've met her a few times. She's very kind. She's very funny. She's very good for the king. She's clearly the person that he loves and wants to be with. And that's fine. And that's how it should be. And she's bright. She's well read. She's extremely warm. She does a lot of good things. I think what the reasons that have ended up with her being Queen, if I'm honest, is because I think various things. Firstly, I think the king has always wanted to legitimise his relationship with Camilla. And the British public, quite rightly, have always been quite ambivalent about it because of the nature of it. You know, she was his mistress. He was married to Princess Diana. You can argue that that wasn't a good marriage and he should never have entered into it. And maybe they were both coerced by circumstances and tradition and all that stuff. But the fact remains was that he was unfaithful with Camilla, and she was a very negative influence on Princess Diana, and also, you know, I would argue on the boys. And I think that, however polite everybody is now about it now, I think both Prince Harry and Prince William still feel quite sore about what happened there, and I think that's totally fine. I think that's fair.
I would agree with almost all of that. Though I've never met her, I'm sure that I would find her very likable if I did. And everything you say about her is true. It's nothing to do with any kind of personal animosity. And she's obviously very good for Charles. And I've got used to, and I go to a very traditional church where we have a thing called the Prayer for the King's Majesty most weeks. And it takes quite a while to get used to praying for a king instead of a queen. Just as when I sing the national anthem, I struggled a bit to begin with to say king instead of queen because it takes a while. But this isn't like that. This is a fundamental refusal to accept that this person is the queen in the way in which the previous queen was. It's only because I think it's probably the palace have been pushing media to refer to her as the Queen that I feel this way. I feel I've been provoked a bit, and I've kept. I mean, when they initially got married, I thought, well, I am, again, very traditionalist about this sort of thing. I didn't think that it was right for them to get married because I'm quite strict on these matters. As far as I can see, Camilla Parker Bowles still has a living husband. And according to the laws of God and man, you can't marry somebody while you have a living spouse. Somebody else. The Church of England is I
think that's probably not something most people would agree with.
But it's oddly enough, it's something that Charles is pretty committed to because he certainly makes out to be a very strong traditionalist in the Church of England. He's a great supporter of the 1662 prayer book, and the marriage service in that book is quite unequivocal. You marry for as long as you both shall live until death do you part, and under no other circumstances is the marriage dissolved. Now, he could be, if he didn't do that, if he'd gone through his life being a progressive liberal who didn't believe in that sort of thing, it wouldn't be quite so bothersome. But it's just so contradictory. And there's this great moment in one of the Narnia books, I think the Horse and His Boy, in which one of the children of a king is arguing about the succession, which of the two brothers should be king. And his father says, it's the law that you must be king and that your brother cannot be. And it is the law that makes you king. And it's the law that makes me king. On no other basis is Charles king. He isn't king because he swept through the country with an army and put his foes to the sword. He isn't king because he became king in a coup d'etat. He's king through a law, and a very, very old and ancient law. And if he respects that law and expects other people to respect it, then it seems to me to apply in this case as well. But as I say, I'd shut up about all that if there didn't seem to me to be this campaign for us to call Camilla the Queen.
Well, I respect your view, but I don't take it on all of that. And I think it's right that he should be married to her, actually, because I think that people should be able to be married to the people they want to be married to.
Oh, well, look, let's get something straight there. I'm all for having their personal happiness, but Edward VIII had a similar problem. He wanted personal happiness, but he was told he could have either personal happiness or the throne, and he chose to abandon the throne. Charles is having both.
Yes, he is. He is having his cake and eating it.
I think it's important that...
No, it's important that that's said. But I think personally, and I don't think she is the one particularly who is driving this, I think it's him, because I think he is very worried that when he dies, if he dies before her, that she will not be treated in the way that he thinks she should be treated. I think he's very conscious of the fact that a lot of people like yourself don't think she is legitimate in her position. And I think that's why he wants her to be the Queen, not Queen Consort.
Well, she has my assurance that she should be treated with absolute respect.
Yeah.
If he should be the first
but
to
it's
die,
quite romantic.
I'd be appalled by anybody who tried to treat her with anything other than full respect if that were to happen. So I think that may be an empty worry.
Yes, I think that you have to remember the sort of strength of feeling for Diana and the strength of animosity towards Camilla, and I think he's very protective of her, and I think he wants her to be respected and loved. And I think, in her defense, I think she's done a lot and worked very hard. But the fact remains that she was his mistress, and that's just that's not. I'm not being rude. That's just the situation.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not being rude. I mean, I probably wouldn't say what you've just said out loud because it's not. It's not the point to me. The point to me is that the whole edifice of monarchy rests upon a foundation of nothing other than respect for ancient laws. And that if, while being monarch, you don't respect those laws and ignore them, then you undermine the monarchy which you yourself are supposed to be upholding. For myself, I can see a lot of sense, and I'm very much not a Diana partisan. I think she did immense damage of her own kind. But if they were to wander off together into the gardens of Highgrove and lay aside the whole panoply of the monarchy, it would probably be better for everybody.
Yes, I think you're probably right.
I always hated those people who said, oh, we should skip a generation simply because they were Diana partisans. But I think that given what's happened, given that the very strong argument is used that the personal happiness of these two people is so important, which of course it is, then how about saying, all right, that's it then. We've done our bit. We've kept the throne warm for long enough. And it's time to slip away. Yes,
I don't disagree with that. And I think they're both of an age now where I imagine they would probably quite welcome that.
Well, I think they'd have a lot more pleasure and relaxation in their lives if they did.
Exactly.
Actually.
It's interesting that they live at Clarence House, not Buckingham Palace.
Oh, what a sensible choice that is.
But Buckingham Palace, which is where the Queen lived, the Queen that we refer to as Queen, I've always felt it was kind of like a sort of rather run-down hotel. It's very soulless.
Well, I think it was. It's not a nice building, but I think she much preferred Windsor Castle anyway, as I understand.
Yeah, exactly. And Clarence House is much cosier. It's very sort of lived in, and
I'm told it's very chintzy and still the ghost of the Queen Mother.
It has definitely got the ghost of the Queen Mother in it, and it's got because I had supper there once many years ago with him and her together with my ex-husband Michael, just the four of us, and it was very nice. But they've got the most fantastic. If you're interested in this sort of thing, which I am, they've got the most fantastic vintage wallpaper in the drawing room, which is just it's all sort of peeling off, but it's just beautiful because it's just original and it's just gorgeous.
Well, it's life as the old nobility used to live but can't afford to do
yes,
anymore.
It's sort of shabby. It's proper.
They pay inheritance tax.
It's real shabby chic, as it's proper, genuine shabby chic. And there's a lot of rather dark red carpet, which I think probably hides a multitude of sins. But no, I mean, she is a very nice woman, and she makes him extremely happy. And I think that is a good thing. But I am with you. I think she should be Queen Consort. I wonder what our listeners think about this. If you would like to get in touch, you can. You can email us, alas@mailonline.co.uk. After break, we'll be back talking about Peter's favourite subject. I chose it because of you, Peter. Submarines. Dive. Welcome back. This is Vine and Hitchens, and we're going to be talking about one of Peter's favourite subjects, submarines. Something that he knows a lot about and I know nothing about. But the former head of the UK Armed Forces has condemned the state of submarines carrying Britain's nuclear deterrent. Now, I remember we talked about this a few episodes ago, didn't we, Peter? We touched on this.
Yes.
Admiral Sir Tony Radakin has decried the Royal Navy's decrepit subsurface fleet. So the problem is that the subs are old and decrepit, but they have to spend an awful lot of time under the sea now. I think 22 months was the longest recently.
No, not that long yet. No,
No.
more than 6 months.
Yes.
was the last one, which is far too long for anybody to endure that. It's very, very hard going. I think 3 months is probably used to be considered the maximum. Everything is very restricted, apart from everybody having to be extremely quiet, because you cannot be heard. The sameness of the food, the fact that you never see daylight, the fact that you cease to smell anything interesting, the fact that your eyes adjust to the fact that there is no distance, and also the fact that you see the same people day after day after day after day, and not much happens. This is nuclear missile submarines we're talking about, the ones which carry the Trident missiles, not the other ones which don't tend to have to spend so long at sea. And the other thing that happens is that supplies run out and there's no proper contact with home. People have special arrangements. Some have actually asked not to be told of bad news from home because they don't want to have to live with it all the time they're underwater. Others ask to be told about it. It depends. And I know of people who've done this who, when the boat finally surfaces and real air comes in, they're sick because of the intensity of the richness of the smell of real air after months of this repeatedly recycled air that they've been breathing, which gives you one indication. Also, they're not generally allowed to drive cars for some days after they come home because their eyes haven't adjusted to distances and they're not safe to drive. It tells you how much physically it's affecting you and therefore how much psychologically. So it's very bad for the people. But the other thing is it's simply not efficient, and it's a warning of something having gone seriously wrong.
Well, they're supposed to be replaced by now, weren't they?
15 years ago they were obsolete. I remember going out and seeing HMS Vanguard when she was new, shooting off her first missile off Cocoa Beach in Florida. And that was a fantastically long time ago. I've still got the souvenir baseball cap, which the US Navy tries to make me wear.
Is it just money? Or is it just that thing where, you can never be bothered to bring them up for long enough to fix them?
No, it is. We can't afford it. It's one of those things that we as a country pretend to be. We pretend to be a superpower, and being a superpower is fantastically expensive. And these things are very, very expensive to replace or maintain. Almost always. I can't remember whether it happened with Trident. It certainly happened with Polaris, that there were going to be more than 4 boats. I think there may
What was the difference between Polaris and Trident? Sorry.
Polaris was the original 1960s, much shorter range missiles, which were sold to us by the Americans under John F. Kennedy, the Nassau Agreement, and they became obsolete. Moscow has around it, not many people know this, a very sophisticated ring of anti-missile defenses, and it became clear that Polaris couldn't get through them, so they developed a thing called Cheveline, which was multiple warheads which were supposed to get through, but nobody really believed in it, and we had to buy then from the Americans.
What do they cost?
Billions and billions. We don't own the missiles. We lease the missiles from the United States, and we have to go to Kings Bay in Georgia to pick them up.
We lease them?
We make our own warheads, yes. I remember when I was a defense correspondent, a huge amount of trouble caused when we were told this by a civil servant on some trip Tiffau's Lane, and Margaret Thatcher exploded when the word lease appeared in large numbers of papers the following morning because it was true, and she didn't want it to be known, and she went wild and demanded blood and heads all over the place for it having come out. It wasn't supposed to be so, but we do. We lease them. They're not ours. The missiles are American. The warheads are ours. They're increasingly, I think, attuned to American technology. And the boats are ours, but the missiles are American. What they cost, I really couldn't say, but billions. And the thing is that all the time they're at sea, they undergo a great deal of degradation because of the simple, anybody who lives near the sea knows that the seawater and salt get you, and it just decays much faster than it would. So these costs are huge. We're spending billions, and it probably doesn't work because the last two tests of firing Trident D5 missiles by the Royal Navy have failed.
Right.
One, the missile shot off, it came its cavity properly, and it ignited properly, and then it shot off in the general direction of Nebraska, where it shouldn't have gone, and they had to destroy it in flight. Although it didn't have a nuclear warhead on it, it would have been very embarrassing if a British missile had fallen on Omaha or somewhere like that. The next one, it came out of the pod properly. They're expelled from the submarine. They're kept in cylinders, and they're expelled by what's called gas and steam, sort of belch, and the missile shoots up about 150 feet into the air, and then it ignites. You can't have it igniting inside the submarine. But on this occasion, it didn't ignite. It just fell sideways and plopped into the sea.
So why aren't we just decommissioning the whole lot?
Because we were engaged in a huge, immensely expensive long-term program for Trident replacement, and the government is committed to it. And anybody who attempts to raise it as something, so maybe the time has come for us to admit we can't do this anymore, is immediately decried as a Jeremy Corbyn supporter or an agent of the Russians, and there is no debate. The problem is that this stuff doesn't work. Almost certainly, and is too expensive for us to maintain. And I think there will be a crisis in the next 5 years when one of the boats has to come home because it's simply been at sea too long, there's no food left, and there is no other boat available to replace it. And they'll try and suppress it, and then the news will come out, and there will be a huge scandal. That's what I predict.
Do you happen to know what the Navy think we should do? Presumably, what the generals think we should do.
Well, the generals, if you remember Field Marshal Bramall, one of the greatest soldiers of our time, the one who was cruelly slandered a few years ago before he died, he was among many army officers who were convinced that we should get rid of it and have a much more modest nuclear deterrent. Israel, which has obviously nuclear weapons, substantial numbers of them, does not have the superpower intercontinental system that we have. It has submarine-launched cruise missiles, which it seems to think in its very dangerous state are adequate for its problems. So you don't have to have this elaborate superpower stuff.
It feels like an obsolete concept in itself.
Well, we can't afford it, whether it's obsolete or not. The Americans can build these things by breathing in, but for us to build them means we have to starve the rest of our defense budget, which is why the Army is so small, and many of the surface ships of the Navy don't work and are tied up alongside all the time because they can't go to sea because their engines don't work in warm water and idiotic problems of that kind. And also why these ridiculous new aircraft carriers, which we have, which as far as I can tell were built as job creation projects in Scotland by Gordon Brown, don't have their own aircraft. They have to borrow aircraft either from the Royal Air Force, from land, or from the US Marine Corps. They don't have their own designated aircraft on board them, which is ridiculous. And imagine if they were at sea and war broke out and they had American planes, F-35s on board them, which, by the way, are too expensive to use. You lose one, you've lost about enough money to finance the education budget for a year. The ones aboard His Majesty's ship, Prince of Wales, or whichever it is, will be under the actual political and military control of the President of the United States. Or what if he disagrees about the war we're in?
Exactly, but also the point is you're not going to use these ballistic missiles because if you do, it's the end of the world.
There is that too. Yes, I'm pretty sure.
It's pointless having them.
I might make some. The whole thing's gigantic bluff. I might. I can think of one prime minister who might conceivably, because they will have to write letters to the submarine captains as to what they should do in the event of finding out the world's been destroyed. I can think of one prime minister who might not have written, just go home, guys, because what would be the point after the world's been destroyed, destroying it some more?
Yes, exactly. So I just think, I think the sensible thing to do, for someone to just say it, just this is pointless waste of money and time. Let's just decommission the whole lot.
The difficulty is you can't decommission the whole lot. We spent so much money and effort on obtaining nuclear weapons, and we are free by treaty to continue to have them, which most countries are not allowed to do. It'd be very silly to get rid of the ability to make them and the ability to have them. But we don't have to have this vast superpower Cold War assembly.
No, exactly.
You have a few free-fall bombs and some nuclear
what the Israelis
cruise
have got.
missiles. Exactly, and you don't have to you don't have to stop being a nuclear power altogether. You just become a much smaller nuclear power, and then you actually can have proper conventional defences, which make it much less likely that you would ever even consider using nuclear weapons.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's just an example of political idiocy, if you ask me.
It's an example of the great delusion of this country that both politicians and many people have, that we're still a great world power.
Yeah.
We'd be so much happier if we grasped that we're not, that we are a very lucky, comparatively prosperous, a very beautiful and very old and very free country in a wonderful position with I would even say a great climate, but we are not a superpower. We'd be a lot happier if we were more modest about what we attempted to do.
Yes, correct. And I would agree with you on the weather front. I quite like the English weather. Shall we go to some emails? We did ask for your emails and you did not disappoint. And if you would like to be involved, just a reminder that you can email us your questions or book or viewing suggestions at alas@mailonline.co.uk. Our first letter, Dear Sarah and Hitchins, Peter.
Maybe. Many people cannot spell my name, including cousins of mine. I've given up resenting it. It's just normal.
Your headscarves episode is the first podcast I listened to, and I found it extremely interesting. I am a young Muslim man from Somalia, and I have two younger sisters, both at university. They used to wear headscarves when they were younger, and I suppose it is because of my mum and aunties who still wear it. I really enjoyed the episode. I would love to hear your take on Israel and Palestine. I heard Peter on the Times radio suggest that Israel should not have reacted at all. Alas, the Israeli government had different ideas. Jonathan Sumption wrote an article for the New Statesman and accused Israel of committing war crimes. And now our PM and international human rights lawyers are aiding and abetting the war crimes.
I could just say that I didn't say that Israel should not have reacted at all. I said they shouldn't have reacted in the way that they did, that their reaction should have been more intelligent. One of the things I actually suggested, oddly enough, was that they might reasonably attack the Hamas leadership in Qatar, which is something they have eventually done. But I thought and think that attacking Gaza, which is full of innocent human beings, is a mistake and will lead nowhere but more trouble. Yes. And will also, what I predicted at the time, I said what will happen is that Israel will do immense damage to its political standing in the Western democracies as a result of what it's doing or what it proposes to do, and that it will therefore weaken itself in the long term in a way which will make it more or less indefensible. I think that prediction has come absolutely true.
That is correct. I think the thing is that at the time of the attack, and in the sort of subsequent few days afterwards, I think people felt great sympathy for Israelis.
And rightly so.
And there was a huge coming together, generally, globally, of this is not okay, because of the sort of atrocities that were committed were sort of unspeakable, really. And then all of that sort of love and goodwill and sympathy and compassion was eroded by the actions.
Thrown away, actively thrown, not eroded, actively thrown away, as if it didn't matter, as if nothing could ever touch them. The feebleness of the White House through both the Biden and the Trump administrations has been astonishing. They are the only people who could call up Netanyahu and say, look, you can't carry on doing this. And if you do, then the supplies of weapons will stop. So stop it. They could do that, and if they did it, then he would have to do but they did not use the power that they had, and therefore they allowed this to happen. In my view, the deliberate killing of civilians, and there isn't any question if you start bombarding a densely populated area like Gaza, you're deliberately killing civilians in it, is just straightforwardly wrong and should not be used as a weapon of war.
I mean, and the other thing is they could have tried to extract the hostages in a different manner. The thing about what happened on October the 7th is there's really nothing you can do that is sufficient retribution for that kind of thing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, retribution must be directed against the culprits.
Exactly.
You can't collectively punish everybody who lives in Gaza because Hamas, who are obviously not exactly the Liberal Democrats because they run Gaza. So that's obviously wrong. Extracting hostages from Hamas has been in the past a very difficult thing to do, and it doesn't always succeed. And when it does, it involves the handover, which Netanyahu did at an early stage. And there's large numbers of prisoners Israel doesn't really want to hand over. So that was always going to be difficult. The question was, did the horror of the actual attack in any way justify the response? The answer is no, it didn't.
Yes, but I think the thing is that given the way that everybody felt about October the 7th, the fact that everybody was just absolutely astonished and horrified at what had happened, Israel could have enlisted an international response, I think, if they'd
possibly.
been sensible.